Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode Beyond the Seven, live from Jerusalem with Rabbi Aaron Dovid Poston. We're doing the 48 Ways to Wisdom, folks. This is just a dynamic class. Today, we've got part 16, and I encourage everybody, go back, catch each and every episode. You'll see how everything grows and mounts and grows and mounts and grows and grows and grows, and it's going to keep on going. We've got a long way to go, but every class is gold. So please, I encourage everybody to check it all out. But let's see what the rabbi's got for us today. Rabbi Poston, always a joy to be with you, and I'm thankful once again you stay up so late in Israel after Shabbat to share the Torah with the nations of the world. Thank you, and the class is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Dan. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to see, well, I can't see anybody, but I know they're there. I'm glad that other people have joined. And I get a lot of feedback. I get a lot of emails and texts, and people are enjoying it and growing. And it's actually, for some of the watchers, they claim it's even one of their best classes. So the 48 Ways to Wisdom.
Oh, there's clarity in it.
Tov, so let's start. First of all, Shavuot Tov and Chodesh Tov. And this is the month of Geula, the month of redemption. And Bezrat Hashem, we should see some really good news coming forth. What did I want to say? I want to mention that this is not class number 16. We're dealing with the 16th way for the 48 Ways to Wisdom. So I forget what episode it is, but it's the 16th of the ways in which one should actively pursue wisdom, right? So it's called minimizing business. Keep in mind, it says minimizing. It doesn't say to negate. It doesn't say to completely not be involved in business. We all know how business is important. In fact, I'll give you a one Pirkei Avot. We're going to deal with a lot of sources towards the end, but I wanted to mention a verse that we'll deal with to get a perspective, and one of the Pirkei Avot. So actually, let's deal with the verse I want to mention first. That's in Proverbs chapter 2. It's really verses 4 and 5. Okay, so let's deal with that just to get a perspective that business is necessary.
Read it, Rabbi?
We're going to do, yeah. Well, you can go ahead and read it, and then I'll try to explain it.
4, if you seek it like silver and hunt for it like treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord, and you will find the knowledge of God.
So, just to put in perspective, it says minimize business, not to do away with it, which I'll explain shortly, but ready for this? To seek wisdom like it's a business. So the word minimize, it's like mitzamtzem, to constrict, to focus, to hyper concentrate. So we're going to talk about how you should, I don't like saying people should, but in terms of what we're trying to learn here, so one who wants to incorporate this into their life, so they should look at their life like it's a business. In other words, there's so much wisdom in the business world, and we're going to talk about the different aspects. If you were a CEO or you were investing a lot of money into a business, you would want to make sure these things happen. Well, this is your life, right? Like, I don't know, drum roll. Like this is the greatest show on earth, right? This is your life. You want to be successful. You want to acquire as much, and I'll just use the analogy here, silver, money, right? Whatever we call profits, let's say, in your business. So now take all your business acumen and concentrate it into whatever lessons there are in terms of running a successful business. Use that for your life, right? In other words, seeking real money, seeking fame and glory and all kinds of material profits is not what life is about. Okay, many very wealthy people have been asked. Surveys have been done, and many of them are unhappy. Or they have found where the true happiness is, and it's not in the glory of the money, but it's in family, it's in meaning. Okay, so that's how we're going to start off the idea that minimizing does not mean to do without. Obviously, we're going to see. I'll just bring this verse in right now. There's no way that we should do without. That's in Pirkei Avot, chapter 3, Mishnah 17. It's just the last line of that Mishnah, and I'll just read it. If there is no flour, there is no Torah. If there is no Torah, there is no flour. So you may ask, well, what is like? What do they? There's a famous expression: "What came first, the chicken or the egg?" Right?
Yep.
So where do you start? I mean, if you have no Torah, so you're not going to have any flour. If you don't have any flour, you're not going to have any Torah. So what does it all mean? So I don't want to be all over the place because there's so much information I want to share. But I will tell you, there's another Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, right? If you don't incorporate malacha, some kind of work, with your Torah learning is not yafet. It's not really substantial. So let's just discuss this one idea. If there's no flour, there is no Torah. Notice it doesn't say if there is no bread, there is no Torah. So the Maharal points out, I mean, we all have refrigerators. We have storage containers that are, hermetically sealed, and we don't really have to worry too much about bugs. If it was, placed into this container without any bugs, we're not so afraid. But in the old days, I can imagine it was very difficult. Sure. So what is flour? Flour. I make pancakes. I love pancakes.
Beautiful.
So it doesn't take a lot of flour to make a few pancakes. Can you imagine? To say bread, it means I already have to have the full, the end product. To say, and bread is like dough, and dough is like money, right? It's another way of expressing actually a minimal amount of flour is all I need. I don't need a lot. I don't need a whole loaf of bread. All I need is a little bit of flour. That's minimizing, right? You hear where I'm going with this. Okay, so the more Torah you have, in a certain sense, the more siyata d'shmaya, the more assistance from Hashem, and He will provide that little bit of flour, right? So you don't have to have a whole loaf of bread. You don't have to have so much. And, what do you have? You open up your whole cabinets. You have this little, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some. Remember those old Kodak containers you used to put your film in? That's how much flour you need. You don't need a pound or a kilo. You just need to make a few pancakes, right? A little pita bread. Okay. So that was we're like just building the foundation here. Number one, I just want to review. Minimize means to focus, to concentrate, to take lessons. And we're going to discuss them. Let me just give you an idea, because one should think of themselves as the biggest business, right? Was it, there was a circus, the greatest, circus
show
on
earth. Yeah.
The greatest show on earth. This is you. You're the greatest show on earth. So if you're the biggest business, I'll just list 5 things that Rav Noach Weinberg would bring out. Time management. It's so important. We learned this in yeshiva. It was so important. And we'll talk about each one of these more in detail. If you were running a business, you would want to hire efficiency experts, right? If you were running a great business that you wanted to succeed and not to fail, you would have a certain amount of quality control. And you would have a long-term plan, a 5-year plan maybe. And maybe that's enough. I mean, obviously, you have to have short-term plans and long-term plans, but let's cut it in the middle. You need at least something like a 5-year plan. And of course, you would have research and development. I mean, we're going to discuss all of these. So think about it like you really are a big business. So number one, we spoke about, I think it was in Proverbs, right, chapter 2, that seek it like silver. So what's the comparison? I mean, that's money, right? That right there is how we can begin this idea that it's really like a business. Now, one of the other ideas is that every good, successful business probably has, I mean, I don't know about the mafia, I don't know about all these under the radar, but you have to have orderly books, right? You have to have the books in order. It's very important. So these great ideas that I just expressed, anybody in business would know this is a prerequisite to success. So let's talk about just in general. There's a positive and a negative. The positive is everyone has to do some business. The negative is don't overdo it. Okay, that's going to be one of the main themes. Okay, so let me tell you how the Rosh Yeshiva describes these ideas. Unfortunately, many people have been swallowed up, right? They
Yep,
get involved in a
totally.
business. Like I went to university, I went to college, I went for business, but it was a very specified business. I was a chef's apprentice, and I went to hotel, motel, restaurant management. That was my, I don't know if today if they still do like these very
Sure they do.
specific things. I had a great professor. He happened to have been Jewish. I think I was the only Jewish kid in the whole class.
Wow.
We got along great. So he had all these great business ideas. I'm telling you, besides, let's say, what I learned on the streets, I think I'm very street smart. I'm not very academic, although I had surprised myself somewhat. One of the ideas he brought up, like you opening up a business. Okay, you're going to open a restaurant or a hotel or some kind of service, and you found like a great rent, great place, great location, but you didn't do the background check. Why don't you go to City Hall and ask the committee if they have any plans to redo that street? Maybe it needs major, what do you call it,
Plumbing,
sewage work,
sewage. Yeah,
plumbing,
yeah.
anything where they're going to rip it up, and you might be out of business for 6 months. I mean, maybe somewhere within the next 5 years, right? Doesn't that make sense? You're about to invest, so it was just like an idea that you never, maybe never would have thought of. Okay. So the next idea, he brings down a story about Elijah the prophet. It happens to be in one of our midrashim, and Elijah the prophet meets up with a fisherman. Now, what does he ask him? He says, have you ever studied Torah? So what is the fisherman going to say? He's going to say, look, I don't really have much time for that. But so he says, I'm just a simple man. I'm not very intelligent. I can't really understand the Torah, but at least God blessed me with the ability to be a successful fisherman. So Elijah, he asked him, how do you, right? He's going to test him here a little bit. Maybe it's not right that you're not learning Torah or putting enough time. The question is, how much time? I'll just skip to one other point. I know we're all over the place. The Rambam says that someone who's, we'll call a balabayit, he's not a Torah scholar. He's just a regular Jew. The Rambam says he should learn 9 hours a day and work 3 hours a day. If that doesn't tell you what it means to minimize business, I mean, come on. So I was fortunate enough to be mishamesh, to assist Rav Noach Weinberg's brother, and Rav Yaakov Weinberg was Rosh Yeshiva in the yeshiva in Baltimore. And he gave a shir once, and I was like, well, mind-boggling. He said, that was what the Rambam said back then. Today, halavai, if only it would be that people who are not Torah scholars, if they work 9 hours a day and put in 3 hours of learning, halavai, if only it would be. Unfortunately, we get sucked up. Look, I mean, family's great. We got family to deal with. Baruch Hashem, we got kids to deal with, got school issues, parent-teacher meeting. There's a lot of things that grab our attention. But Torah study for a Jew, and of course, we know we're talking to many non-Jews here. However, fixing a time for study is an absolute necessity, whether it's 1 hour a day or 5 minutes a day, or even 5 minutes a week. It should be a priority. So we see how far the generations have gone down. But I think it's a very interesting observation from the time of the Rambam until present day. Going back to the story of Elijah the prophet. So he meets this guy and he says, well, let me ask you a question. How do you prepare your nets? So he goes in such intricate detail, how he weaves them, how he even picks the type of rope, right? And the kind of patterns he uses in order to create his nets. And he talks about it as being a very exact science. He says, okay, now how do you go about catching the fish? So he says that's also very complex. He goes into the different seasons, the different types of streams, the different types of water currents, the temperatures where they are, in respect to the surface or lower down, how far you have to put the nets down, how long they should be in there. It's like a whole science. And he says, I've studied for many years mastering these. So he says, it's very impressive. So you really know your business. So he says, who gave you all this understanding? Of course, he says, well, he was a believing Jew. This Elijah was talking to this guy. He says, obviously, it came from Hashem. Well, he asked, if it's the Almighty that gave you the intelligence to fish, surely he gave you enough intelligence to study his Torah. So I don't know what, I know we're all simple people, right? Guess what? You, Dan, many of the listeners, you could put a little bit more time and energy into learning. Don't think that it's beyond you, right? Hashem will give you siyata d'shmaya. I think I mentioned in last week's class that if you teach your grandchildren Torah, the statement was said, it's as if you're receiving the Torah from Mount Sinai. No, the question is, I asked, who? The grandchild, as if he is, because you're keeping the link. There's a transmission that's complete, as if he's receiving it from Har Sinai, from the revelation itself, or you, the teacher. I believe it's both. I think the teacher for sure will receive an added siyata d'shmaya because he's going out of his way to teach. Again, teaching, there's a prerequisite to teaching, of course, and that is to learn. So I'll just mention what Eliyahu's parting words were, because this fisherman was crying out, very upset that Elijah basically rebuked him to a great degree. So Elijah says, my son, do not be so distraught. Every one of us on the face of the earth has the same exact excuse, but our own actions will testify against us. So this is another thing in Judaism, as opposed to many other religions, right? Our actions, our deeds, that is what we are creating. And so it's totally possible, even if it means sitting down with one Mishnah, right? Or one Jewish concept, and just reading that paragraph over and over again, or just King David's Psalms, reading it over and over again, until whether you're practicing your Hebrew or you're, just trying to memorize it, the concepts, and then going to a commentary. 1 week. Can you imagine? There's only 52 weeks in a year, right? So you're talking about in 3 years, you could go, if you just take one chapter of Psalms, there's 150. That's all, in less than a year, in less than 3 years. Okay, I'm not rebuking anybody. I'm just reading here. This is, it's a business, right? We want to be successful. You have to make the efforts. You have to make the efforts. If only the Almighty would have given me understanding and wherewithal to reach my potential and become great in Torah, to create the best marriage possible, I would do it. But he didn't give me the tools, so I don't need. He never gave me the tools that I need to succeed. That is, we're lying to ourselves. If you could succeed, even like as a cleaner, right? You go and clean people's homes. You know which type of detergent, what kind of sponge works well on that type of surface. We're going to talk about time management, right? At some point, okay, it's true, you might be getting paid by the hour, so maybe you don't care, but that's called geza, that's stealing. But you should try to figure out how to be efficient. Like if your boss expects you in 2 hours to clean the whole house, can you imagine if you could do it in an hour and 55 minutes, right? You still get the 2 hours. You'll still get paid for 2 hours. But think about it. I mean, if you are using the wrong material that's causing you to work doubly hard or extra hard, or the wrong cleaning
solution,
the same thing. I mean, he really gives a few different examples. One of them is about just in terms of like your shoes. Okay, every morning you wake up, okay, you know where your shoes are? You could spend every single day 5 minutes looking for your shoes. I mean, come on. All you have to do is put them in a certain place every night, and they're always in the same place. You don't have to spend 5 minutes. That's 5 valuable minutes. I mean, just as an example.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah. Okay, operate efficiently. That's the next idea. So he uses an example about a factory worker that whatever it takes, 10 steps to turn a bolt. Now, the 10 steps could be, where the bolts are located, to where the tool to turn it is located to maybe how many steps, physical steps you have to take to go here and there, whatever it is. But guess what? What if it could be done in 2? So try to imagine if you have, I don't know, how many factory workers doing exactly the same thing, times that by how many minutes or hours, and then take it for a whole year. You could have, I don't know, I'm going to throw out a number. It doesn't matter. 30 hours, 50 hours, 100 hours, times however many workers there are. What a waste of money, right? So think about in your own life, how we could use our time much better, right? With wisdom. So he just mentions over here again, life is big business. Get organized. Get your time under control. You'll have less stress and you will achieve more. The next idea is just hard work. So a guy goes to college and he thinks he's going to be an engineer. He applies to an engineer school. And guess what? After a week, he says, okay, where's my money? I want to be an engineer. I want to make a lot of money. So this is why I'm here. I came to make money. The school's like, what? You just applied. I mean, you're talking about years of learning. And after that, you're going to apply, hopefully, at a job where you might make minimum wage. You still have to pay back all this other money that the tuition. And it's going to take you a while till you get a good name for yourself. You be able to put a plaque. People will come to you. They heard you're, a great engineer, and they'll commission you out. It doesn't work like that. You don't. What is it called? Instant gratification. Here too, people invest lots of money, and they know that they're not even going to. I mean, I don't want to say, God forbid, open my mouth to the Satan, but people do know, they are aware that it could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road before they actually start making a profit. I mean, this is part of opening a business. You just know you can borrow money, even if it's your own money, right? You have to count it as if it's borrowed. So you can't just expect to make money immediately. So acquiring wisdom requires determination, discipline, and patience. Keeping that in mind, of course, hard work. Strategic planning. So we discussed these ideas in general. Now we'll talk about them. So strategic planning is an absolute must for any successful business. No serious businessman just says, oh, let's open a factory in China, especially today, right? So, just send somebody, go buy a building. First, they have to determine their long and short-term goals, decide on core strategies to reach those goals, spend months to doing the necessary research on a wide array of crucial issues. Where are the raw materials coming from? What is the labor market? What are the taxes and export costs? Who is the target market? So effective living, because this is what it's all about, requires effective planning. Because if you don't know your destination, you will never get there. That's right. So you have to know, what are your long and short-term goals? Okay, keeping an accountant. We Jewish people, before they go to sleep, say the Shema, and we make a cheshbon nefesh. Truth be told, I mean, you can make it during the day. You don't have to wait till the end of the day. But it's a good time to, for sure, go over it. Anybody who has a store knows they have to, what do you call it? It's taking stock, right? You have to know when what sells, what's not selling so well. You don't want to have empty shelves of the best selling article. You don't want to be waiting for it to come in. It's very disappointing. Customers will go somewhere else. They might not come back at all. It takes so keep an accounting. Before you go to sleep, you have to make a cheshbon nefesh. But here he writes, the businesses can succeed or fail because of the quality of their accounting department, right? I think you have discussed this with me too. I don't want to say anything on the TV here on this. Okay, so to properly measure your business, it is essential to have thorough, accurate, and up-to-date balance sheets to understand your income and expenses and your profit and your loss. So too, in life, we need to make spiritual accounting. That's what cheshbon hanefesh. The word nefesh means personal, soul, right? You need to, every night before going to bed, review your past day's events to evaluate whether you profited or you lost. What did you accomplish today? What mistakes did you make, right? If you don't know what mistakes, you're bound to do them over and over again. The next thing, I mean, I'm not saying it's the next thing, but for sure, at some point before retiring, make a plan for the next day, right? You just write it out, even if it's not the exact times, right? Even if it's not so detailed. I know I have to go shopping. I know I have to mail this letter. I know that I have to call this person to apologize. I know I have to call this person to invite them for Shabbos because my wife told me, do this, and I have to add all the things she asked me, because it will help me the following day even prioritize. When I wake up and I look at it, and things can change, right? Things can change a little bit. But how am I going to live an effective life unless I make my own accounting? Research and development, right? So don't you want a better product? I mean, isn't that ultimately what research and development? It could also bring the price down and make a better profit, that's for sure. But you want to have a greater profit, right? When you're a CEO of the company and you say, you know what, my company's making enough money. We don't need a research and development department. It's like, are you kidding me? Okay, also testing the market. Right? Before you put a new product out, you want to make sure that there's a consumer, and that could take months of research. So too, before making any major life decision, such as moving to a new city, getting married, choosing a career, be sure to do a thorough analysis of the long-term feasibility and ramifications. Now, I know many people don't like this person. I'm sure that your listeners all do. But imagine a CEO of a company. We're not going to mention which company, but he actually became president of the United States. Imagine he heard a great idea from a janitor in his tower or in his hotel. This guy supposedly, right, would be willing to listen to the janitor who had an idea. Where else are you going to get your ideas from other than the people in your business who have been working for years? And we're not even talking about, I'm sure this person would elevate and give the guy such a bonus for if this idea could bring him much more money. But if someone is willing to take the advice even from a janitor to make the business more profitable, of course he would. Right? The same thing is true in life. Why are we looking at people who we think are less than us, or not as smart as us, or not as rich as us, or not as successful as us? So too, they also have life experience, and maybe it's worth listening to. And he ends with the verse which we started with in Mishlei. That's Proverbs chapter 2, verse 4. If you seek this, King Solomon, remember, he's the wisest man who ever lived. Why wouldn't we listen to him? If you seek wisdom as if it were silver, take the acumen of business, condense it down, focus on it, minimize it. And he says, we know how to be serious about pursuing money by applying the same diligence and tools to pursuing wisdom. We can scale the heights of greatness. Okay,
Rabbi?
so now, yeah.
Can I make a statement? When I first did this class, I heard the rabbi sharing it at the time. If you seek it like silver and hunt for it like treasures, and he likened the different methods for discovering those elements of silver. Whereas silver, you've got to mine, you've got to dig, you've got to actually pull out the raw ore to get to it. Whereas treasure is like a buried treasure where you actually have to do the research like you were explaining. You've got to research and look for treasure in a way that it's buried somewhere and you need to find exactly where, and that there's something big here going on. It's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to bring a few other ideas. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 13.
Deuteronomy 13, verse 30.
No, the other way around. Chapter 30, verse 13.
Oh, forgive me, sir. Chapter 30. Verse 13 reads, "Nor is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will cross the other side of the sea for us to fetch it for us, to tell it to us so that we can fulfill it."
Okay, so obviously this verse has much deeper meaning that I'm going to say something that sounds very superficial, but it's only the first few words. Nor is it beyond the sea. So we have a Gemara that tells us that people who work like on boats and they travel a lot, they're not capable, or I shouldn't say capable, they're not likely to become great Torah scholars. Let me just read the words here. And the reason, right, it's not beyond the sea, whatever, this is because Torah can only be properly acquired with constant study and review. We spoke about that last week. Review, to the point that the Torah scholar will not leave the study hall to go out and engage in business. Okay, so don't think that you're going to find it on the other side of the sea. It's not there. It's right here under your nose, right here. So that's what the Gemara expounds on this verse. And
I was looking for this verse actually the other day, Rabbi. Thank you.
It's not across the sea. So he goes on. The Tana specifically said, our Tana, the author of our Mishnah, right? With limited business activity, but doesn't say without business activity. We all know that we have to live, because living without some form of income is impossible. But minimizing it, right? Concentrating on the most valuable thing, which is wisdom. And use all of your acumen, business acumen, to acquire wisdom. And another Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, and I'll tell you where it is. 125. Where do I have it? It's Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, Mishnah 2. Rabban Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, would say, beautiful is the study of Torah with the way of the world. Now, in Hebrew, it's in derech eretz. That's what it means. But we'll go on. It could mean, derech eretz could mean ethics. It usually means work. But it goes on. For the toil of both of them causes sin to be forgotten. Ultimately, all Torah study is not accompanied with work is destined to cease and to cause sin. So in Hebrew, the whole Torah she'eni ma malacha. Malacha is work. Sofa b'tayla the gagaret avon. Okay, so you see that we cannot do without. The question is how to minimize. Now, we did discuss this in the beginning when we talked about the basic 7. One of the ideas in the laws of Jubilee of Yovel was, or Shemitah and Yovel, the Rambam brings down that all humans, not just Jews, who dedicate their life to Torah will actually have removed from them the government and even hard work, and Hashem will provide. They turn over their life to Hashem, and Hashem is their portion and will provide. King David, right? We talked about that then. So it just reminds me of something that I shared in my last class on the Parsha, the Yakel. I just want to share it now because I think it's just absolutely fascinating. Since we know there are 7 general principles, Noachide laws, what is so significant about 7? So I want to share this piece. We'll get back to our business at hand. I just think it's so fascinating. So the Torah itself is our link. Like we're talking about, that is the most important thing in the world, to acquire wisdom. The Torah is our link to Hashem, is the way we can understand ourselves and the world around us. It's so important. You cannot live without Torah, Jew or non-Jew. So number 7 is going to be linked through everything I'm going to talk about. Days, weeks, months, cycles of years, and thousands of years. It's all linked. And the reason I connected it was in last week's Parsha, because the Torah tells us, right? In the beginning, Moses gathered everyone together, 6 days a week, you shall work, and then the 7th day, it's a rest for Hashem. And then you have the laws of building the tabernacle, and one of the principles we learn is whatever comes first is more important than what comes second, And therefore, Shabbos pushes off building the temple. You have to stop doing what we call melacha, what we call the 39 specific creative acts that went into building the tabernacle / temple, the dwelling place of Hashem. Okay, with that in mind, so the Kli Yakar, who the shir I give, goes into great detail in another book. It's actually called the Olos Ephraim. It's another book he wrote. It doesn't matter, but this is where he starts. That the days of the week, so the days of the week, the day the Torah was given on Shabbos. We know that. We left on a Thursday from Egypt. 50 days later, it happened to be Shabbos. The day that we received the Torah from heaven, Matan Torah, on Shavuos, the first, right? That happened on Shabbos. So there's already a connection. The idea of learning Torah. It's so important that don't think that Shabbos is a day of doing nothing. It says to make Shabbos. It actually says to make Shabbos. Make Shabbos by learning Torah. So that's the first idea. That's what you should be doing on Shabbos, learning as much Torah as possible. So number one, the Torah was given on Shabbos. So now days. So that's days. In other words, first of all, there's actually a medrash that says each day was paired up with another. So Sunday and Monday were together, Tuesday and Wednesday were together, Thursday and Friday. Every day had a partner. Shabbos had no partner and asked Hashem, where's my partner? God says, the Jewish people are your partner. You're going to be unified with the Jewish people. So that's why the Torah and Shabbos go so well together, that the Jewish people should be learning Torah on Shabbos. Okay, the Torah was given on Shabbos. The next idea. Weeks. So the Torah itself was given on Shavuos, which means after 7 weeks, 7 times 7, 7 days, 7 weeks, the Torah was given on Shavuos. Okay. The next idea is months. I know this is a controversial idea for those who have no clue about the oral Torah itself, but we know the Torah does say count from Nisan, right? That's the first month, which today is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Very nice. What's the 7th month? The 7th month is the month the Torah was actually received. What do I mean? Just real simple. We left in Nisan. 50 days later, we're at Mount Sinai. Okay? At Mount Sinai, we said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will accept, right? We'll Na'aseh, we will do. V'nishma, we will understand it. We took a commitment. We entered the covenant. 40 days later, Moses comes down, supposedly, allegedly, with the first set of tablets, but unfortunately, allegedly, no, I'm kidding. I don't mean, it's not a joking matter, but unfortunately, we collectively were involved in the sin of the golden calf, and Moses broke those tablets. We never received the actual tablets. So the next 40 days, he's praying for our forgiveness. He was very busy, and God said, I forgive you on the first of what day? A month? The first of Elul. I forgive you, come up, and you will receive the second set of tablets. So 40 days later is the 10th of Tishrei, the 7th month. Tishrei is the 7th month? That's when we receive the Torah, i.e. the 10 Commandments, Eser Dibrot. So you see the number 7 in terms of months. The 7th month, we received the Torah. Next, okay, then we had years. So there's a Shemitah cycle. Everyone's aware of that already, right? The 7th year. What happens on Shemitah? The farmers, they all sit and learn Torah. That's what they do. They don't work the land. They don't harvest it. That's what they're doing. That's what they're supposed to be doing. And that's, by the way, this idea of the non-Jews sitting and learning and dedicating themselves also applies. That's what the Rambam brought down in the laws of Shemitah and Jubilee. That anybody, doesn't matter if you're born a Jew or not, you have every right to dedicate yourself fully. Not everyone chooses that, but if you do choose, there's a promise you'll be taken care of. Hashem is your portion, and he will take care of you. Okay, so now we have years. Now there's cycles of years, because the cycle of the Shemitah, the 7, I'm using that number again, 7 Shmitot is Jubilee, right? You have 7 times 7, but the 50th year is the Jubilee year. Okay, so you have what happens in the Jubilee year. So each Jew goes back to his portion. Goes right. Literally, if he sold his land, it's not sold in forever. It's sold only like a lease up until 50 years, meaning up until the Jubilee. And he goes back. This is the words of the Torah. He goes back to his portion. His portion is the Torah. And therefore, again, you sit and it's like 2 straight years of Shemitah, right? The 49th year is a Shemitah year. And the 50th year it's a Jubilee, but you're also not allowed to work the land. 2 full years of sitting and learning Torah. Okay, now there's another concept called the thousands of years. So the world, just like it was created, I'm going to use the word created in 7 days. It was created in 6 days, and the 7th day God rested. We know it's a 7-day cycle. So too, there's thousands of year cycles. So the first 2,000 years, like we started the Medrash, that every day had a partner. So the first 2,000 years was called chaos. Tohu vavohu. That was before Abraham, entered the covenant. So around the year 2000, I'm talking about Jewish time, that's Abraham was born in 1948, so he was 52 years old. He made a covenant with Hashem around that time, and that's when the next 2,000 years begins, called the 2,000 years of Torah. And then, somewhere around 1900 years ago, we had what we call the beginning of the time of Mashiach. So the last 2,000 years are called the times of Mashiach, and the last 1,000 years had no partner. Of course there's a partner, just like the first 7 days of creation. This is where there will be no work. It's going to be Shabbos, 1,000 years. All that will be pursued is the wisdom of Hashem, right? And this is for Jews and non-Jews alike. Non-Jews alike, right? We're talking about the resurrection of the dead. There won't be any hunger. There won't be any poverty, right? All that will be done is the mind, the spiritual pursuit, right? No more searching for bread or making bread. There won't be any work. And just like Shabbos, it's all done. Anyways, I wanted to just introduce that idea.
Beautiful.
Very beautiful idea. Okay, now, in Pirkei Avot, chapter 1, verse 15, Shammai would say, make your Torah study a permanent fixture in your life. Say little and do much, and receive every man with a pleasant countenance. It's really the first part, right? The idea of Ois aseh torasecha keva, make your Torah learning fixed. Very important. Like I said, if it's 5 minutes a week, doesn't matter. That's it. Turn off your phone. No, you don't exist to the outside world. This is, right? All the work, whatever it is, you work a 35-hour, a 45-hour, 40-hour a week. When you get to that 5 minutes of bliss, of just learning Torah, you're dead to the world. Another idea brought down in Pirkei Avot, chapter 4, verse 10, Mishnah 10. It actually says, Rabbi Meir would say, engage minimally in business. Have mama'id be'esech Torah. Minimally in business and occupy yourself with Torah. Okay, I don't want to read the rest. It's all good. It's very interesting, but that was the main point over there. Here is the Rambam. He brings down ideally the ideal schedule of a working person working 3 hours a day to support himself, learning Torah for 9 hours a day. I already mentioned earlier on, Rav Yaakov Weinberg Zatzal said, halavai, if only today, that people who do work 9 hours should put in, say, a minimum of 3 hours, right? Halavai. It does say in Gemara Kedushin, 82a, that a person should teach his son a clean and easy trade. So maybe this is a Jewish thing, but come on. I mean, what's the purpose? So that the person can still have time to dedicate part of his day to Torah study. There's another Gemara in Brachos 35b. It's a great question. Like, in other words, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, everyone heard of the Rashbi, right? So he was a little bit of he sounded like an extremist, right? He spent 13 years, 12 years in the cave. When he came out, he was still hot and on fire, and he had to go back. He went back for another 12 months, altogether 13 years in the cave. So, but he really felt that people should not be working; they should only be learning Torah. That's what he felt. believed. He lived it. So there's the Mishnah over here says, the Gemara says, many did like Rabbi Yishmael. What did Rabbi Yishmael do? Yeah, you plow at the time you're supposed to plow. You plant at the time you're supposed to plant. You harvest at the time. And many people were successful in their Torah. In other words, they had a job, and let's just say they had normal lives, and they were successful in both areas, both, let's say, financially in the world and with Torah as well. The Gemara also says, many people tried, like Rabbi Shimon, Rashbi, but they didn't succeed. To constantly engage in Torah study, putting the burden of earning a living onto Hashem's shoulders, so to speak, and they were not successful. So what do you think it's trying to teach us? Don't even try? No, I don't think so. I think it means that if you don't succeed, it's not the end of the world. If you feel this is your calling, there's no reason not to try. Know that the numbers are going to be against you, meaning the possibility is going to be against you. That's why I encourage many of my students who have converted, halavai, it would be great if you're young enough and you're able to go to yeshiva just for 1 year. Just try it 1 year, right? And my other students who are younger, right? Before you get married, right? Before you go off to college or before you do anything in your life, try to make it possible to spend 1 year, maybe 2. You're not going to get that opportunity again. Once you get married, you're going to end up working. Who knows what's going to happen? You have kids. Not that it's a bad thing. All those things are good, but they're very time consuming. And if you could try at least temporarily, especially when you're young. But you know what? Many people who as pensioners after they retire do this, and I tell you, they do have great regrets they didn't do it earlier. But that's the way of life. What can you do?
And life gets away on us if we don't manage it.
Very important. The Rambam brings down these ideas. We mentioned in the beginning. To minimize business means to hyper-focus on learning all the lessons you could have learned and applying them to your life. So in the Talmud Torah, in his Yad Hazakah on Talmud Torah, chapter 3, halachas 6 through 9. I'll read through them very briefly, just to get an idea. He mentions a person whose heart inspires him to fulfill this mitzvah properly and become crowned with the crown of Torah. That's called Keter Torah. By the way, Keter 620, that's the full 613 plus 7. That means this is applicable to Jew and non-Jew alike, should not divert his attention to other matters, and he should not set his heart on acquiring Torah with wealth and honor simultaneously. In other words, I'm not saying it's all or nothing, but in a certain sense, you have to be willing to give up. Doesn't mean you can't have it. You may have old money, you may have a very wealthy spouse, you may have a wealthy father-in-law, you may win the lottery. There may be certain things, talents that you could still do 2 or 3 hours a day to make a lot of money. But where is your attention, right? Where is your focus? So don't divert your attention to other matters, right? Don't set your heart on acquiring both Torah and wealth. It may come, but rather such is the way of Torah. Bread with salt you shall eat, water in small measure you shall drink, and on the ground you shall sleep. And a life of discomfort you shall live. But in Torah you will toil. Now, this is another very important Pirkei Avot as well. The task is not incumbent upon you to complete, right? There's a lot of work. You just have to start. You just have to do your bit. And bit means small amount. Just know you're not free to desist from it, right? You're never free. If you've acquired much Torah, you've acquired much reward, and the reward is in accordance with the difficulty. In other words, lefum tzara agra. According to the effort is the reward. So someone who makes a great effort, their reward will even be greater. The next halacha says, perhaps you're going to say, I'll wait until after I amass a certain amount of money, and then I'll return and study. Right? How many people have said that? I'll wait until after I acquire what I need, and I'm free from my business, and then I'll return and study. If you allow such thoughts to enter your heart, you will never merit the crown of Torah. It doesn't mean you won't be a good law-abiding, Jew or non-Jew, but it's not going to get you the crown of Torah. Rather, make your Torah study primary and your work secondary. Do not say, when I have free time, I will study. Why? Because it may never come. Right? Okay, the halacha 8, it's written in the Torah, it is not in the heavens, it is not across the sea. So this statement, it's not in the heavens, hence the Torah is not found in proud, spirited, or arrogant people, nor is it found among those who travel across the seas. Therefore, the sages said, not everyone, I hope I'm in the right place, not everyone who is involved excessively in business will become wise, right? And our sages also commanded, here it is, minimize your business activities and occupy yourself with Torah. And the last halacha the Rambam brings down, the words of Torah are not found in the proud-spirited or in the hearts of any of the high-hearted, but rather in a person who is subdued and lowly of spirit, who wallows in the dust at the feet of the sages and removes temporal desires and pleasures from his heart. He works a small amount each day, just enough to sustain himself. When he doesn't have enough to eat, when he does not have enough to eat, and the rest of his day and night he engages in Torah study. There's two more points I think I wanted to bring, and that is he mentions this Mishnah we already spoke about in chapter 3:17 of Pirkei Avot. If there is no flour, there is no Torah. We know that. You know what? A father has to teach his son a trade. So the type he should train him in is, like we said, it should be light. It shouldn't be hard. But if you don't do this, you're putting your son in danger, God forbid, of becoming a robber, right? And like to earn a dishonest living, right? If you don't teach him a trade, he's going to start, forging checks. I don't know, whatever. I can't imagine, right? If you don't know what to do, you're going to start stealing candy bars and bread from the stores out of desperation of food to eat. I already mentioned about the Maharal. It says flour, right? Flour is like just a little bit. So what do you add? You can add all kinds of stuff. You can add some water, some yeast, maybe an egg, and you're set. It's a good breakfast. Okay, and there's, I think I covered everything.
Beautiful. Real peaceful class tonight, Rabbi. Real peaceful. I mean, there's so much there that is practical, but in the end, I love how you brought out how the person achieves the crown of Torah explicitly, but how that's contrary to the more driven world that we have here in the West. I mean, here in the West, you have rational choice theory economics. I think I've brought it out before, where people seem to think more is better or else you're irrational. And that's what they teach in a lot of universities on marketing. And it's just contrary. But if you put the Torah first and you pursue it like that crown, the way you mentioned, it actually brings life more rewarding. And I've met, like you say, many people that are well-to-do, but they're just not happy. They're not fulfilled.
Yeah, I mean, look, if someone could spend some time in a Jewish neighborhood, an Orthodox Jewish home, and someone who is scholarly and, of course, with good midos, of course, they'll see the value of their learning Torah and how it like filters down into the family life, how these people are truly happy, even if they don't have that much. And those that are wealthy, that are, filled with Torah, that they're modest, they're somewhat modest. I mean, again, are they really wasting their money? And how they're wasting their money, probably not. There are those that do. But if you could spend some time with some of these people, you'll see. Okay, so that's it.
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, modest. I love that. The small amount that you mentioned, the Maharal, the small amount of flour, and that is enough to suffice. And
for a daily breakfast. It doesn't mean you have to amass that much anyway. It could go bad. So make sure, when I first got married and I wanted to study, my wife at the time told me, as long as we have food on the table, I don't care. I'm not interested in wealth.
Beautiful.
And my kids got to see it, Baruch Hashem. All right.
Oh man. Well, that's beautiful. So, Rabbi, we're not on for next week, as we've mentioned, and then you've got Passover coming up soon, and so we've got to take a couple of weeks off, don't we?
Yeah, because we're in the middle of the campaign, but I think we reached our goal. It seems like we've reached our goal, and raising money to supply families. We have 30 families that we're helping. Of course, there may be more. If people want to continue to give, they can go onto the website.
Yibane.com?
Yibane.com. But on the YouTube channel, we have Rabbi Breitowitz gave a 2-minute spiel, we'll call it a 2-minute drasha, on the mitzvah of giving and helping people for Pesach to get through the holidays. And so there's a link for the actual campaign at the bottom.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's a 1.5 minute message, and that's the best way to go about doing it. So the more money we have, the more money we have to give away. So that's the goal. So I think we were trying to raise, I think, $7,500, and before I came on, we were at 7,000. So we have.
Well, there you go. Hey, let's push him over the edge, folks. Hey, reach out, Yibane.com, or go to his YouTube channel, Yibane YouTube channel. Check it out. Find that link. Rabbi Breitowitz, just a wonderful scholar. 1.5 minutes, you'll get the link to that. Let's push him over the edge, folks. You guys that are out there all over the planet. I see we got people in Germany. I see we got people online in the United States, even people down in the islands. It's so good to see people from all over the planet check in at the Noahide World Center classes here, and it's just a joy to be with you, Rabbi Poston, and I'm loving this Beyond the Seven series and the 48 ways most of all. So we're off next week. We're probably off for a couple of weeks. We'll keep you apprised. So till then, we're going to sign off for now, Rabbi, unless you got any final words.
I just want to mention that I'm going to put the link in this description box. It'll be near the bottom. The chat box. It'll be near the bottom. And I want to wish everybody a Hag Sameach, right? Whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, right? You're celebrating or helping us celebrate or participating on whatever level you do in this, we'll call it a new calendar year in terms of the 1st of Nisan. It's an amazing. Jewish life is just so full of all kinds of good things that not just wisdom.
Delicious.
Not just wisdom. There's simcha, right? There's hope for a better world. And everyone who's watching it, I know that you probably feel the same way I do. So just keep watching, keep learning, and feel you're participating also on some level in the Tikkun Olam, maybe by sharing with your pagan neighbors or people who are like just nice, decent people. There is such a fountain of wisdom to tap into, and keep sharing.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. So folks, we're signing out. Have a great day. Thank you once again, Rabbi. Bye for now.